Hi, I'm Joey Dardano, and on my new podcast, Hope from a Hypocrite, I'll be changing lives, helping people in need with my sage advice and thoughtful solutions. Psych! I'm a comedian! I'm not qualified to give good advice. Join me and my comedian friends as we riff, rant, and recommend some of the most legally dubious advice known to man. Listen to Help from a Hypocrite on America's #1 podcast network, iHeart. Follow Help from a Hypocrite and start listening on the free iHeartRadio app today.
True Scary Story is a podcast where people share their own terrifying encounters. It was actually chosen as a podcast of the month on Apple Podcasts' Dark Side collection, and also as a top-ranking show on Spotify. Ghost stories, retelling of long-lost memories, and nightmares that seem a little too real. Come find us by searching for True Scary Story on your podcast app, or tell us your own encounter over on TrueScaryStory.com. I'll see you there.
There was my girlfriend, standing in front of me on the road. But it couldn't be possible. The worst thing was, when I called her on the phone, and she answered me from her house. Good evening. I hope to find you well and receptive, because the stories you are going to hear today are especially difficult to believe. Yes, we will talk about macabre encounters on roads, but different ones, truly bizarre events in the Anglo-Saxon sense of the word. Some would even call them glitches in reality, but they can also simply be paranormal encounters, ghostly, demonic, or even in a category we still do not understand. So today, especially, get comfortable. But if you are listening in the car, on the road, pay very, very close attention to your surroundings. This episode can draw those energies toward you. If you see two identical people at different points on a street, if something happens that you are certain has already happened before, if you see someone you know is no longer in this plane of existence, you will know you are already becoming the protagonists of tales of the night. Good evening, community. I have been listening to you from Alaska, where I have lived for 7 years. It is a difficult place, I am sure you can imagine, and my town is no different. I do not spend the winters here. But in any case, it is an inhospitable and very special place, one where human beings perhaps should not dwell, and that is felt every single day. Here too, at night, in the mountains, in the ice deserts, it is well known that things inhabit these spaces that no one can explain. And I do not mean animals, but something more spiritual. Anyone who has lived here or visited will not be able to deny it. Those places feel inhabited by something that cannot be seen, especially during the long nights. Creatures that should not exist. What I am about to tell you happened last year. I had little time left before returning, and I was staying with my girlfriend. She and her family do stay through the winter. I was working on road maintenance, far removed from any town, and at a certain point my colleagues moved away, and I finished my work and got into the truck to turn on the heating. It was getting dark, and all I wanted was for my colleagues to arrive so we could go rest, so I could take a hot bath, put on dry clothes, and eat the soup my girlfriend was going to make for me. It was getting dark, and there was no sign of my colleagues. I was not worried, because they know the area and its dangers well, but I was impatient, until finally I saw a figure approaching from ahead, just a silhouette. I turned on the lights to get a better look, but then I realized it was not either of my two colleagues, and that was strange, because I should mention we were tens of kilometers from the nearest town. No one in their right mind would dare to walk out there. I could not make out who it was, so I signaled by flashing the truck's lights. On, off, and that silhouette kept walking without me being able to distinguish anything about it. The only thing I could think to do was take out my phone to zoom in with the camera and see if I recognized something, but when I looked up, the silhouette was gone. I got out, looked around. There was no one. The wind was blowing in a strange way almost, I swear, almost as if something was using it to hide. Then someone knocked on a box in the truck bed, It was my colleagues. They had come from behind. I told them what I had seen up ahead, and the first thing they said was that we needed to leave right away. But I told them that maybe it was a person who had had an accident, someone walking in search of help who had not been able to withstand the cold. They hesitated, but they listened to me, and we went out to look, briefly, finding nothing other than the sound of the wind. And there was something in that wind that convinced the two of them, and me along with them, to leave that place. They had grown up there, so I decided to trust them. We hurried and drove quickly to reach the nearest town where they would stay. Mine was half an hour further, and I would have to make that stretch alone. They asked me if I minded driving that way, alone, or if I wanted one of them to come with me. Of course I said no, but I cannot explain it. Something was felt in the air, an anxiety, as though a tragedy were about to happen. One of my colleagues decided to continue with me anyway. He said that in any case he had matters to attend to in my town, and that he would take the opportunity to go, that it would be no problem to spend the night at a friend's place. So the two of us continued. I switched to the passenger seat and he sent a message to his friend letting him know he was on his way and asking him to pick something up from the store. So we stopped at one before leaving that town. It was already closed, but my partner knew the owner and went to knock. I pulled the truck a little further ahead. Behind us there were lights. Ahead, only darkness. Only black in the road, lit up a few meters by my headlights until I turned them off to wait. The wind was growing stronger and stronger, and I noticed someone walking on the sidewalk ahead, in the dark. I wanted to make out who it was, but I was seeing poorly. I thought my tired eyes were playing tricks on me, because the figure looked a great deal like my girlfriend, but she approached until she was right in front of the truck, on the opposite sidewalk, just across the street. I swear it was her. She looked exactly like her, maybe wearing clothes a little lighter than the temperature warranted, but sometimes you step out like that when there is an emergency. My girlfriend, however, was in another town, several kilometers away, half an hour by car. The figure made gestures at me, motioning for me to come with her, but all I could do was ask Siri to call my girlfriend. It took longer than usual, but finally the call connected. The woman across the sidewalk smiled.
"Well, hello? Everything all right?"
said my girlfriend on the other end of the line. I asked her where she was, and she told me she was at home, that she was finishing cooking the dinner she had waiting for me. So she had not left town today?
"No, not at all. I've been here all day."
I do not even know why I asked her that, but my mind was trying to make sense of the fact that I was seeing my girlfriend on the other side of the street when she was actually tens of kilometers away. The woman on the opposite sidewalk smiled, and then, as if it were nothing, began walking toward the darkness, toward the road, in the direction of my town, although there was only death in that direction for anyone trying to reach it on foot at that hour. The next thing I remember is my partner shaking me. He told me he felt very unsettled, almost in shock. My girlfriend was still on the line, worried, because I had hung up without saying anything, though I do not remember doing that either. I told my partner what I had seen, and he told me that he had warned me not to get out of the truck when he had seen something, back there in the middle of nowhere. In most places in the world, you might try to help someone in the middle of the night, but don't do it here again, he told me. He advised me not to tell my girlfriend anything, and I listened to him. I am never going to tell her that at the same moment she was somewhere else, there was something that could somehow look like her.
True Scary Story is a podcast where people share their own terrifying encounters. It was actually chosen as a podcast of the month on Apple Podcasts' Dark Side collection, and also the top-ranking show on Spotify. Ghost stories, retelling of long-lost memories, and nightmares that seem a little too real. Come find us by searching for True Scary Story on your podcast app, or tell us your own encounter over on truescarystory.com. I'll see you there.
What I am going to tell you, dear tales of the night, I would not believe if I had not lived it alongside my father. If it had happened to me alone, I would have thought I was losing my mind. or that I had seen poorly, or that everything had some explanation. But it was not like that. We are from Hermosillo, Sonora, a place that has appeared several times on your program, although I would never have thought of it as especially mysterious, energetic, or paranormal. Nothing had ever happened to me there. My sister got married and went to live with her husband in Sonoita, a town near the border, about 5 hours from here. Her husband works almost the entire month in Tucson, Arizona, and when my sister was in her last months of pregnancy, she began to have health problems. Her husband was given some time off, but only a little, so I was the one going there so she would not be alone. One weekend, when her husband would finally arrive to stay with her until the birth, my dad told me not to take the bus back, that he would come to Sonoita for me and take the opportunity to give my sister a hug. He arrived early. We spent almost the whole day with her, and around 3 in the afternoon my brother-in-law arrived. We had a meal together, and then my dad said it was time for us to head back. My sister insisted we stay and leave early the next morning, but my dad does not like sleeping in other people's homes, and he was also right that we needed to arrive in time to get enough sleep to open the business early the next day, a small taqueria the two of us run together. We left Sonoita in a hurry to get back on time. I tried to drive first, but I was very sleepy, and the road is very monotonous. Pure desert, desert and more desert, nothing but sand and shrubs. I asked him to make a stop so I could switch and he could drive for a while I slept. He agreed. We got out to switch, and as soon as he started driving, I fell asleep. It was a strange kind of sleep, not like sleeping normally. I felt completely sunken, as if I had suddenly switched off. I was not dreaming anything, but I could not wake up either, as if something was holding me there. I do not know how much time passed, but I began to hear my dad talking to me from very far away, as if he were inside a tunnel. He was telling me to wake up, to look outside. I wanted to open my eyes, but I could not. It took a great deal of effort to react, until suddenly everything shook. I felt the car veer sideways, felt it lurch onto the sand, and that is when I woke up all at once. I opened my eyes and held on as best I could. We were no longer on the road. My dad had been watching a light in the sky, something that had struck him as very strange. That is why he had wanted to wake me. When he could not, he tried to take out his phone to record it, but at that moment he lost control and we went off the road. We were very lucky no other cars were coming, or it would have been much worse. We were partially buried in the sand, and one of the tires had burst. I remember that moment very clearly. The sun had already set, but it was not completely dark either. No car passed by, and an extra pair of hands would have been very welcome, because not only did we have to change the tire, but also pull the truck out of the sand. There was nothing to see, only kilometers and kilometers of road stretching in both directions, disappearing into the horizon. Then we saw an old truck approaching, headlights on, though they barely gave off any light. You could almost say the truck simply had lights, nothing more. A man in a dirty hat was driving, as worn as his old truck. Next to him sat a quiet, serious woman, staring straight ahead. The man looked at us as he slowed down. "Need a hand?" he said, smiling, but there was something in that smile that made us uncomfortable. "No, we're fine, friend," my dad told him. The truck continued on its way down that endless straight road. My dad went back to working on the spare and told me another car was coming. He looked again. This vehicle was also coming from the north. It was an identical truck, just as old, the same two colors faded by sun and years, and as it approached and passed us, the man driving turned to look at us, the same man from the other truck, the same smile, but this time he was traveling alone. I reached for my dad's hand to make sure he was awake, and he looked at me with the same expression of disbelief. We turned around and watched it move away, but the taillights of the first truck were still visible on that straight road. I was searching for something to say when I felt my dad grab me and pull us both behind the bushes. "Here he comes again," he whispered. And yes, from the same direction, from the north, the same truck was approaching again. The same man driving. This time with the same serious woman again, staring straight ahead. He slowed down when he passed in front of ours and observed it calmly, as if searching for us. Then he continued on his way. This time, in the truck bed, there was a very large boy who stared only at the road. But as they moved away, I raised myself up slightly, and the boy turned toward us and pointed. The truck drove off, and I promise you the road was so long that we watched the lights of all three of them until they vanished over the horizon. We changed the tire in silence, my hands shaking. The cars that passed after that, the trailers, the buses, were ordinary, but I did not dare look at them. Once we finally spoke on the way home, I swear to you, if we had not both seen it, neither of us would have believed it. When we bring it up, people laugh and ask what we had been smoking. They will never understand the bond of having witnessed something like that together. We will never understand what happened that night in the desert. This happened to me a few years ago on a road some of you surely know. The one that runs from La Paz to Loreto, in Baja California Sur. I am not a person who believes in strange things. I drive a great deal for work, and I am accustomed to this type of road. Desert, heat, curves, hours of driving without seeing anything but hills, shrubs, and a vast stretch of sea. For me, this kind of landscape is normal. That day I had left La Paz early, but due to work matters I was running behind. I had been driving for several hours, and while I was not falling asleep, I was tired. That kind of fatigue that makes you slower, quieter, even without actually sleeping. The sun was high, it was not nighttime, and there was nothing strange in the air. It was very hot, but it was a completely normal day. Before reaching Loreto, there are some fairly sharp curves. They are not dangerous if you know them, but you do have to be careful, the kind where you cannot see what is coming from the other side until you are practically upon it. I was approaching that stretch and slowed down a bit, as I always do, focusing on the road. I took a curve, the sharpest one, hugging the right side, and as soon as I came out of it, I saw a car coming head-on. Nothing strange about that, except that the second I saw it, I knew something was wrong. It was my car, not the same model, not just a similar color. It was my car, same color, same marks on the paint, even a small dent I had on the passenger door. Everything. And when I looked up to see who was driving, it was me. I know it is impossible to believe, but it did not look like me. It was me. I saw it clearly, right there, hands on the steering wheel, wearing the same cap I had on that day. And the worst part was not even that. The worst part was his face. He was frightened, but not the way someone is surprised. It was the fear of someone who had already seen something before it happened. Our eyes met for just a second, and at that exact moment we both did the same thing. We turned the steering wheel slightly, as if trying to avoid something. I felt the car shift a little toward the shoulder. I did not lose control, but it was that instinctive movement. Something is not right, the kind that instantly floods your body with adrenaline, the awareness that something almost happened. The other car disappeared around the curve. I watched it steer away. I slowed down and tried to see if it appeared again on the other curves further ahead, but there was nothing. Only the empty road. I braked a little further on, where I finally found a spot to pull over without too much danger. I sat there for a few minutes, hands on the steering wheel, trying to understand what had just happened. There was no logical explanation. I had not been asleep. I had not taken anything. It was broad daylight, and yet I had seen him, and he had seen me. That is the only thing that has stayed with me, unsettled to this day. His face, the frightened face with which he was already coming toward me. I do not understand it, and I'm afraid that he had already seen something that is going to happen at some point. For now, I no longer wear that cap, so that vision never comes true, if it helps.
True Scary Story is a podcast where people share their own terrifying encounters. It was actually chosen as a podcast of the month on Apple Podcasts' Dark Side collection, and also the top-ranking show on Spotify. Ghost stories, retelling of long-lost memories, and nightmares that seem a little too real. Come find us by searching for True Scary Story on your podcast app, or tell us your own encounter over on truescarystory.com. I'll see you there.
Good evening to whoever is listening. I am going to recount something that happened to me a few years ago on a road I travel at least once a month for work. I would rather not say exactly which one because there are people who would recognize what happened that day, and I prefer to leave it that way. I was calm, even a little drowsy, but not to the point of falling asleep. That state where you drive on autopilot without thinking much, where suddenly you are somewhere and you do not even remember how you got there. Then a call came in. I did not recognize the number. Even so, I answered through the car, thinking it might be something work-related.
Hello?
No one answered, but there was not silence either. There was noise, a very strong interference, like static, but very aggressive, as if it were saturating the phone. Sometimes interference is bad enough that you have to hold the phone away from your ear, but since I heard it through the car speakers, there was no way to do that. "Hello?" I said again. I tried to lower the volume, but nothing changed. It was as if the sound did not depend on the phone at all. And then, within that noise, I heard something. At first, I could not make out what it was. I thought my mind was trying to find shapes in the static, but no. They were voices. People screaming. Not clear screams. I could not make out many complete words either. It was more like despair. The sound of despair, with many voices layered over one another, as if no one was listening to anyone else. I felt something strange in my body, an unease I could not explain. Who is speaking? Who is speaking? No answer, of course. Just that noise and those screams. And the worst part was that I could not control the volume. It would not go down. It would not change. It was just as loud as before. It was so overwhelming that I began to feel desperate myself. I pulled over. I stopped next to the road. It was not a thought-out decision. I simply felt that I could not go on. That I had to stop, to be able to hang up, disconnect my phone, and remove that sound. I stopped the car on the shoulder and hung up. Silence returned all at once. I stayed still for a few seconds without moving, staring ahead, trying to process what had just happened. I checked my phone and there was no number, no missed call, no log, nothing, as if nothing had happened at all. I took a deep breath, composed myself, and started driving again. I had not gone far when I began to see lights ahead. At first I thought it was normal traffic, but as I got closer I realized something was wrong. The cars were stopped, and then I saw the smoke, black, thick. I drew closer until I saw it, until I saw all of it. A trailer had plowed into several cars that were stopped at a toll booth. I do not know exactly what had happened, but the impact was so violent that several vehicles were completely crushed. Some were on fire. I stopped as quickly as I could and got out. I ran alongside many other people who, rather than seeking safety, were running toward the fire to help. I am not a brave person, community, but their urgency was contagious. None of us could do enough. There were people screaming, some trying to get out, others outside helping as best they could. I did not think much. I just ran toward wherever I thought I might be of use. We tried to open doors, pull people out, move them away from the fire. Not everyone could be saved. That is all I'm going to say about that. After some time, ambulances, police, and firefighters arrived, and little by little they began to move us back. When there was nothing more to do, I returned to my car. I sat down. And that is when I broke. Not only because of what I had just witnessed, but because I understood something. If I had not stopped, if I had not received that call, I would have been there. In that line, in that exact place, caught in the accident. And I do not know who called. I have not the faintest idea. I do not know what I heard, but those screams were the same ones I heard later, outside the car, in the reality of the accident.
True Scary Story is a podcast where people share their own terrifying encounters. It was actually chosen as a podcast of the month on Apple Podcasts' Dark Side collection, and also as a top-ranking show on Spotify. Ghost stories, retelling of long-lost memories, and nightmares that seem a little too real. Come find us by searching for True Scary Story on your podcast app, or tell us your own encounter over on TrueScaryStory.com. I'll see you there.